yeah, this really is about putting the residents of our communities at the center of our work together. And if there's like one big tagline or takeaway, it's that, the future of public housing, the future of the residents who live here, are obviously of utmost importance to you all as RHA, but also to us as a city, right? Like our destinies are inextricably linked on this. And so this is, some thoughts that I put together, both because this is the first time that I've really gotten to sort of get to know some of the board members and senior staff. And I thought I'd just share a little bit about my history with public housing. And Ms. Priscilla, if you could, are you putting slides up? Everybody has a deck at their seats that you can kind of work through. But the first is just a few pictures, and these are pictures of folks that some of you all will recognize. But I moved to Richmond back in 2000 to go to medical school, and in 2009 started work at the health department. And one of the first things, you can go to the next slide, so. One of the first things that I was charged with was looking at geomapping our data, looking at health outcomes of interest like low birth weights, like sexually transmitted infections, HIV, and mapping how those health conditions distributed over our communities. And one of the maps immediately told a story, because every health condition you looked at, you would see hotspot over an RHA neighborhood, right? And this was really a manifestation of the link between poverty, deep poverty, and poor health outcomes. But the maps told the story in a really powerful way. And so I remember taking the data to then CEO Anthony Scott and saying, hey, we would love to work with you all to think about how do we increase access to services? How do we work with residents? How do we actually improve health outcomes in communities? And he and the team at the time said, we've got some vacant units that had served as clinics years and years and years ago. Why don't we think about bringing that back? We cobbled together some funding, and we started systematically opening some of these sites that you see here, the resource centers. The first one, I think, opened in 2010 in Fairfield Court, and subsequently every year or so we would open up another site. And those sites were places where the health department would send a nurse and a nurse practitioner. But what we also found pretty quickly was that there was an extraordinary amount of talent and passion in the residents of those communities, residents who wanted to engage in the work of improving health in their communities, had maybe been a CNA or they'd done the lay health promoter program with Crossover. And so we then raised more money to figure out how do we actually hire some of those residents to be community health workers. And so over the years, we really built a fairly robust program where we hired residents from public housing communities as community health workers. We paired them with nurses and nurse practitioners and provided a model to those communities, not only of how they access better healthcare, but also how you get into all of the kind of precursors that drive poor health outcomes, right? Education, higher income, the challenges of transportation or childcare, and all of the things that keep people from being able to access good healthcare and ultimately be healthy. And so, over a decade of work at the health department, and I look back at that time, and we did a lot of good stuff in the city and in the county over that time. But this body of work is really the work that I'm most proud of, that I felt most impacted the health of communities. And I think the linchpin of that was really the reliance and elevation of experts in the community, right? Residents who knew their neighbors better than we did, who could give us credibility because their neighbors trusted them. And it really started to become baked into the DNA of how we operated as a health department. And a lot of what we try to bring to the way that we operate as a city, that we really want to elevate resident voice, and we want to make sure that that expertise is making its way into our policies, our investments. And so I share that story for you all to say that public housing has been a long-standing arc of work for me professionally. It has also become deeply personal for me. And I really do think it is one of the most important things that's going to happen. The redevelopment of public housing is one of the most important things that's going to happen in the city over the next decade. And so because of that, the need for the city and for RHA to really be connected and to be in lockstep it's so vital to the future of our city. All right, next step. This is next slide. Sorry. This is so important that it's actually made its way into our strategic priorities as a city. These are the 7 pillars. We rolled these out in February. They're kind of broad categories of priority for us as a city, a thriving city hall. But the second pillar there, thriving neighborhoods, is really about, you can go to the next slide, is really about meeting the housing needs of a growing city so that Richmonders at every income level can afford good housing and safe neighborhoods with strong public amenities. And as we drill down into that work and into those priorities, we got to build more homes for more people, and we have to develop a new model of affordable housing that strengthens housing stability across the city. Next slide. So the pillars actually pair with another strategic document that we rolled out, the Mayoral Action Plan, which really gets to what are the specific metrics and specific ways that we're going to measure our progress. And what I want you all to see here is that one of our metrics that we judge our ability to create thriving neighborhoods and meet our affordable housing goals is progress towards redevelopment of large public housing communities that commits to one-to-one replacement of our region's subsidized housing units. And that's really important because as we see certainly the economic conditions we're in now, the demand on housing, what that's done to housing costs across the region, the need for us to continue putting public money in and making sure that there is housing that is accessible to the lowest income families, deeply subsidized housing. And so I want to talk a little bit about the letter that I sent you all back in September and some of the requests. And I thought this would be just a good time to kind of check in on those and how we're doing. You know, the staff put some really thoughtful work. You can go to the next slide, Priscilla. Put some really thoughtful work into responding to that document where we outlined kind of 8 things that you see here. You know, in the breakfast the non-breakfast that we just had together, you know, I really felt a sense of commitment, of partnership, and affirmation. You know, Mr. Nesbitt was clear that, hey, I think we've talked about it. We can get to all 8 of the things that are on your list. And so I wanted to, you know, talk through some of these and maybe get into the specifics of some of these. The first is that RHA should use the Jackson Ward Community Plan as its guidance for the Gilpin Court redevelopment and ultimately go through the City Council approval process that it has in the past. And I just want to, you know, for the board, I want to point out one of our areas of concern is that you know, there are some significant departures from what was embedded in the Jackson Ward Community Plan, right? That original plan called for north of 1,900 units with a significant commitment to home ownership. And, you know, the plan that the staff responded with shows 1,343 units. It's a different mix. It's not as much market rate, but it's kind of a mix of deeply subsidized and then some other layers of affordability. And as far as we could tell, the home ownership piece was taken out of that. And so those are just a couple of examples where I think, you know, we still have some work to get together. And again, I'm really affirmed that we will get there, but I just wanted to make sure that you all understand from me what some of those concerns are. The second was a commitment to work with Gilpin Court residents and to really develop a tenant bill of rights. It's something that my partner here talks about almost every day, making sure that we get that tenant bill of rights across the finish line. You guys have agreed to that, and so we do need to get together and start some work on that. The third here is that all 781 Gilpin Court units would be replaced by project-based voucher units. And here's where, you know, you all have expertise that I don't, but I think the goal and really the aspiration that all of our deeply subsidized units would be replaced is of utmost importance to us. The plans that we've seen have, you know, 483 units on site or 453 on site, some in Grace Place, some at the Diamond District. Again, the distribution is great, but there are about 160 units that are missing in that plan. And so I want to make sure that we're accounting for of those pieces as well. The next one, that RHA should distribute materials showing timeline and steps for redevelopment that really map out housing options. And I'll kind of combine this with the fifth one, which is ensuring that Gilpin Court residents have adequate information. You know, this really speaks to the resident-centric part of this, the people plan side of this. And one of the things I didn't mention, my years in the public housing, in the public health department, we were really involved with the Housing Authority and Creighton Court redevelopment. The people plan was really crafted by the city's Office of Community Wealth Building and the health department, and then ultimately working with an RHA-affiliated nonprofit for implementation called ROI. Some of you may remember that. I served as a board member of that. Thad Williamson did. A few other, I think Cynthia did too, right? You were on a lot of boards. Yeah, but, I share that to say that the experience of working through that people plan was that a lot of effort went into the planning. And then when we got to implementation phase, it was really hard to keep everybody together, to adequately fund the sort of holistic case management part of that. And these are key pieces of success, as you all know better than I do, key pieces of successful redevelopment. And so we really want to make sure that the city is involved and that we have a really robust people-centered plan for redevelopment there. The sixth is that, at the time we said that we want the RHA to really reconsider and withdraw its proposal for the Richmond or the Development Corporation until major concerns about who was on that board. And I know you guys have done a lot of work on that. We've had some conversation about that. It sounds like you've brought in more resident voice, which is great. There's one absence that sticks out to me, which is that I think it's really important that there be some city representation on that. Okay. And so I would ask that you all consider that before making that decision. The seventh is that RHA should establish, in collaboration with the city, a shared working group, the Jackson Ward Community Plan Steering Committee. And so the team has agreed to that. And I think there's more conversation we can have about what that looks like, who's represented, and what kind of governance structure exists there. And then the last is that RHA would commit to providing us detailed information about the financials of the development process, about resources, programming. And again, based on the information we got in the binders, the response from staff, there's still we sense the hesitance to kind of put it all out there. And I just want to reiterate, we are completely linked on the future of this, right? Not only does the city have a huge financial stake in this work, but really, at every step, whether it's planning or zoning, permitting, and ultimately funding, we want to be in true partnership with you all, and so fully at the table with you all in that. Next slide. All right, so, as we look at that the seventh concept here, the Jackson Ward the Plan Steering Committee, I think what I'd like to propose is that we had a brief conversation about this a couple of weeks ago, and we've had some time to think more explicitly about this. What I'd like to propose is that we really move to a shared governance model that is driving forward the three elements of this plan: the housing development, the community development, and the people plan. And that shared governance working group obviously includes Mr. Nesmith, Chairman Jackson, myself, our CAO, our DCAOs, city council representation, some other key staff in the city. I think about our head of housing and community development, our DCAO of human services, our DCAO of economic development, who've all been very involved in public housing work over the years. We want community representation of that with key stakeholders like our school system and other partners. We think development partners, whoever you all choose to ultimately develop portions of this, should clearly be at the table. And as always, reflective of our priorities to lift up resident expertise, we want to make sure that the residents are represented there as well. Next slide. All right, a little bit more on just what a great people plan looks like. And, we've spent months and months and months working through this with Creighton. And I'd point to one, that every resident has the opportunity to move to a subsidized housing unit of similar or better quality, right? That's clearly the goal of public housing redevelopment. We know that there are some residents who might actually move to home ownership, right? And Mr. Nesmith has been really thoughtful about building those partnerships and starting to scope out who might be ready for that. I think that's really exciting. And hopefully that can be a significant portion of folks. But we know that many residents will not be ready for that. And so making sure that there's still adequate subsidized housing for that. connection to services, and those services that really look at employment, education, improving credentials to increase income capacity down the road, the work of wealth building. We really want to make sure that's integrated in the people plan. And then making sure that residents actually receive support in becoming lease compliant, because one of the things that we saw in Creighton was that residents maybe didn't know what their current status was, or what was required if they were going to become a voucher user, and what implications that might have for them once they made a move. And so I think really investing time on the front end to prevent somebody from being able to move into a new house with a voucher, but then 3 months later find out that they're either not in compliance or can't sustain themselves there. And lastly, that we would be able to measure the improvements in that work across a number of different metrics. Next slide. All right, so in summary, I think here are the things that we want to see. We want to see great people plan that we are really willing and ready to invest heavily in as a city, right? This work is so important to us. We know that our Department of Social Services, our Office of Community Wealth Building, our health department, so many aspects of the city operation want to be at the table with you to execute that people plan. Shared governance, I think, again, I can't say enough times, our destinies are linked on this. And so the city having a true authentic seat at the table with you, and making sure that we can govern together as we think about what redevelopment looks like. And the third would be a commitment to working together. And so, we named December 17th because I know that's the next time that you all are getting together as a board. So I would ask that you all as a board continue to talk about, discuss, and hopefully come together and say, yeah, we want to be wed with the city on this, and that we move towards an MOA that would document all of that. And I'll end with this, that, as I said, our initial meeting with Chairman Jackson a couple of weeks ago, our ongoing conversations with Mr. Nesmith have been nothing but positive and moving in the right direction. And I really believe and aspire or expect that we will get there together, and don't really have an option not to. So thank you all so much for the invitation. Thank you for the time, and look forward to seeing us transform this city together. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.